Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Sweet Tooth. Great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. This episode, I had to fight back the tears on multiple occasions because this was just like a heartbreaking episode in so many different regards. So first and foremost, it opened like the way I pretty much figured it would. It opened with Tiger dying in her in Becky's arms, and Becky regretting the rest of my family, the only family she's ever known throughout all of the at post the Great Crumble. The only family she had, the best friends that she had, are all gone. And, it's that survivor's guilt of, I should have been there with you. Maybe I could have changed things, or at the very least, I could have died with you. But Tiger's last words are, be there with your sister. Because she talks about it later on. That's why she started the Animal Army. It eventually came into hey, let's hunt down and fight the last men and kill them and help hybrids. But at the heart of all of this, it was always about trying to find her sister Wendy in all of this. And it just morphed into also taking down the last men and stuff. So, but Abbott is on his way and it's time to fight. And Amy, her message back and forth between her and Becky, saying, I'm sorry that your friend Tiger died, but she gave us fair warning, so we need to take advantage of this situation. It's I'm leaving, because for Becky, the way she handled things, she was we never thought of handling things your way. What you did was braver. You didn't fight the last man. You took all these children and you didn't just rescue them. You took them in and you raised them as your own. These are your kids. And it's we didn't have the strength or knowledge to do that, but you did. And it takes even more bravery to do what you did. And obviously for Becky, it's my army is gone. The fact is, it's just that thing of maybe if we had done things differently, how the Animal Army had done things, maybe we would be in a different position. Who knows? We could have probably helped out even more if we handled things the way Amy did. But at the end of the day, Amy's your army may be gone, but you're still here. So I need you to look after my kids. I trust you to be the one to look after them. And that's pretty much what I figured was going to be the direction of I thought going forward, Becky and maybe even the Animal Army, but obviously they died, could have been the ones who kind of picked up her legacy of the Preserver. But now I'm maybe it's all fully in Becky's corner now to do that, to fully carry over her legacy, because she doesn't have that much time left. At the same time this is all going on, we catch up with Adi, and obviously his entire world is shattered. It's he's lost it all. He has nothing. Hey, the cure was a failure. I lost Ronnie. I have nothing. So he sits in the purple flowers because he's hoping just to die because there's nothing left. I guess maybe he's thinking also maybe when Ronnie eventually dies, maybe I will eventually meet with her in afterlife type of situation. And he has a dream about bringing Gus to a cave. And I'm assuming that was because it does seem like him and Birdie are tied not only by their connection to Gus, but he wanted to finish what Birdie had started. And so Adi ends up waking up he didn't die. I don't know whether it's just happens, because it feels even if he was around the flowers, the fact is he didn't get sick and died. Once again, that he kind of hallucinated, which once again is supposed to be something that only happens to the hybrids. But then he pulls out Gus's horn. Maybe it has a proximity effect or something where in that moment he got treated like a hybrid, and so it only made him hallucinate. Maybe arguably it could be that it showed him a vision of the future, because as we see with these hallucinations, they do mean something in the long run, because once again, Gus not only saw Richard, but he also got to see Abbott, so it does mean something in the long run. So maybe that's still in front of Adi's future, but it kept him going. You also notice, obviously during the fight between the Animal Kingdom and Abbott's last men, that it ended up the glass ended up breaking. But I was is it that the air is it just because of happenstance of the fight it ended up breaking open and the air like kind of kept him alive? I wouldn't think that would affect him still being alive. It does. I don't know whether it's just to be. I don't know if you're supposed to interpret that as, hey, it just happenstance that, oh, he just happens to have Gus's horn and that's what actually kept. But it's like even then he's still directly in contact with the flowers, so I would think it is purely the horn. But maybe there's some luck-driven aspect of like coincidental. It's happening like that. Either way, he's alive and well, and he's set his sights on like, right, I'm still alive, and I'm alive because of Gus, and Gus is the answer. So we don't catch up with Adi until the very end of the episode, so we'll get to that when we get to it. But Becky leaves with all of the hybrids, including Wendy, each one of them leaving a gift behind for Amy, and I thought that was beautiful. And it's that thing of saying goodbye, and even Wendy's like, we just found each other again. It's not fair, and it's just like, that is life for you. It's not always fair. It doesn't always work out the way you want it to. So, and I did think it was so poetic. Who do they end up going to? And it makes sense because it's like, right, they are relatively close, but it never crossed my mind that they would go into like they would run into the Andersons, Beverly and George. I was like, that's so neat bringing them back around. And it's like, wow, Rusty is not going to believe this. But it's like, yeah, Gus and Jeopard sent us. They said that you were people that we can trust. And I thought that, and I love they explained like, oh yeah, and Gus got his antler cut off and stuff, like talking about everything that happened. And I love Beverly like, this is why we are never leaving the house, why we're not going into the outside world. It's like, yeah, but the outside world continues to find its way to you, which I think is so beautiful. I'm sure Rusty's really going to appreciate having other kids to, like, it's probably been a little boring and sad not having Gus around, but now it's like, hey, you have like a whole bunch of other people to hang around too, because it's like, yo, Gus is the way he is, and now you get like, oh my god, all these other hybrids who are different, who do all this stuff, so I think that's pretty dope. But obviously you have Wendy not wanting to go, because it's like, no, my mom is still back there, like, especially because it's like, Bear, you're supposed to be at Animal Army, I thought you guys fought, and it's like, yeah, but for her, it's like, it's about, it's not just about fighting, it's about protecting your family. And she's like, your siblings, and specifically referencing like Wendy and her siblings, but obviously we know it's coming from her own heart of like, I want to protect my sister, I'm not letting you out of my sight ever again. I mean, and I love that beautiful pair. Like, I didn't talk about it, but that line from Jeopard last episode where like Gus was like, oh, you thought I left it? He's like, I wouldn't do that to you, especially after everything. It's like, right, because Gus knows because he's also one of the only ones, because I don't think Becky knows either. And he never, well, he did talk to Amy about it, but he never told Becky his side of his story about like, oh, he's in a similar boat where he has family that was a hybrid as well, which we'll get to that later. But so I'm bouncing all over the place, so I apologize, but there's also like the Abbott and Johnny stuff. Johnny was like looking at the death and destruction, and he was tired of it, because at the end of the day, Johnny's very particular about like, right, these are kids. Like when he was talking about the hybrids, I'm sure the same thing applied here. I mean, all this death and destruction is just a representation of his brother but I think it's just, it finally was too much for him, because I think slowly but surely Johnny has changed because of his experiences with Ronnie. It's made him a better person, that he's not okay with all of this. So he wanted to leave. He was leaving his gun behind. He left his last man badge behind, armband behind, and he was going to take off. But Abbott stopped him. He's like, right, it's got to be the two of us together. We'll kind of go in this. And because Johnny, we learn a little bit more about their past, because that episode, Johnny sat down with Abbott, Ronnie, and Adi for dinner, and we kind of learned a little bit about their past, and even more in this case, where it almost feels like, at least how I interpret it, felt like Abbott was holding it over Johnny's head, like, you owe me, because it comes from a place of Johnny feels so loyal to Abbott because, hey, you're the only family I have left. 2, you protected me from Dad. Like he's like, that look in your eyes, that dread. It's like, that's the same look you'd get inside your face every time Dad would show up and he was in one of his moods. So anytime like the garage door would open up, you'd kind of get scared until you killed him. He's like, yes, I did that for you. So that's why I feel like it is a thing of like, yes, I love you, I protect you, I do all this for you, but it is also like, he has his hold over Johnny because Johnny feels like I'm indebted to you because all you have done is protected me. Because in Abbott's mind is like, this world is not built for people like you. This world will chew you up and spit you out. It's done it to countless other people. He even says later on, that's who the virus wiped out, were all the weak people in the world. This world was not built to sustain people like you. So I was kind of scared. I figured at any moment in time he was going to end up killing Johnny. Which obviously he ultimately does, but I was like, what he really doing on a helicopter and stuff? But when they land, Johnny pulls a gun on him. It's like, no, you got to stop this. Let them, they're kids. Just let them go. Let me go. The cure, it didn't work. It failed. It's like, we'll find another doctor. He's like, there is no cure. But for Abbott, it's like, yeah, maybe. But the difference between you and me, as well as all the other people that died, they were weak. For me, the only thing that's left in this world is winning. He admits that. And that's why I'm like, can you really follow someone who makes it so clear that he has no full loyalty to you, that you are a means to an end, but maybe, I mean, that's like any cult. You're swept up in it, even when the truth's kind of smacking you in the face, like who he is. The fact is, he's just a power-hungry man, a small man who wanted to feel more significant than what he was. He wanted to feel important. He wanted to be the one. Like, that's all this has been about. It's been about power, and he believes that it's like his time to reign in this world. It's like, it's my time, you know? I will, you know, because the whole conversation, especially from the voiceover of the narrator, is a conversation of everyone wanted to go backwards, but there's a point where you just can't go back anymore. And we see that with Audie, we see that with Jeopard, we see that with Abbott, and they even see that with Amy, because there's no going back like to what was before, because she's sick and she's dying and her time is running out. But when it came time for Johnny to pull the trigger, he was hesitating at first, but he ultimately does pull the trigger, except the gun's empty. I was like, oh, he gave it back to you empty. I felt it was kind of interesting that he would give you the gun back, but it turns, well, at least you can imply from his words, Johnny's gun never had bullets. He's like, yeah, what if you ended up hurting yourself or something? Like, it almost felt like he was almost implying there's a possibility, well, I guess because Johnny's the screw up, the clumsy one, so that what if you actually did hurt yourself? But it almost feels like he was almost implying like Johnny probably would have taken another route out of life type of situation. But it's like, hey, I'm letting you go. The moment he tries to let him go, I'm like, oh, you're going to kill him. And he waited till his back was turned. I was wondering if he was going to get like his second in charge for her to do it. But no, he did it himself. He took his second in charge's gun and did it. And all his men are watching, because Abbott had literally made this whole point about like, oh, you don't shoot a man in his back or something because how dishonorable that is. But it's like, what did you do? You did it because you couldn't do it. You needed to get rid of your brother because you're like, right, I'm saving you from this world spitting you up and chewing you out. Plus, I mean, how much of that is like in his twisted mind, like, oh, I'm saving you because if without me, you won't survive in this world, so I'm giving you a mercy? Or how much of it is just your pain of like, yeah, your brother, like he was abandoning you, and that he wanted to abandon you for a while, and he's choosing now to do it. So it's like, right, I gave you an out by bringing you along, and you didn't take that chance. You wasted it, and no more chances. I've given you chance time and time again, especially now where I've given you back-to-back chances after you've decided to try and leave me behind. So, but like, you can tell his men were kind of almost like, geez, like, the fact is you're willing to do that to your own brother. That also goes back to the point I brought up previously. I stopped bringing it up because, once again, there's the line of, yeah, Johnny, the scary guy, like, did he just give off energy where people thought he was scary, but he was actually a lot better than, or maybe just like we got to see a softer side of him, because we didn't see him ever be like monstrous. I mean, obviously when he was kind of the prison guard, yeah, but like I said, maybe being around Ronnie and stuff, he was always soft-hearted regardless, because it seems like that's what Abbott's like problem with his brother was, always like, right, you were the heart, I had to be like the hand, I had to be like the iron fisted kind of run thing. So I am going back to my thought of maybe it was the thing of, oh, Johnny's scary because if you do something to Johnny, Abbott will do something to you. But like I said, that conversation didn't make it seem like that. So that's why I'm wondering, like, where did that come from? Maybe it was just a misconception, or maybe the way he carried himself around the other last men, making them think like, oh, they thought he was scary, when in actuality it's like, oh, he's actually kind of a kind-hearted person when you actually get to know him type of thing. And we got to know that side of him, especially around Ronnie, but also the way he was just like, now you got to let these kids go. So it is kind of sad that it turned out this way, but it's almost like, yeah, what almost wouldn't turn out any other way. So at the same time, like when Abbott and them were on their way there, Jeopard, Gus, and Amy are like the last line of defense. And it is what I thought. It's like, yeah, this is Gus's home territory. He's known this place. He grew up here for like 10 years. So he knows this place in and out. So he knows where to set up the traps and everything. And I love that line of like, my papa did everything he could to protect this place. So it's mine now to defend. So they laid out their traps. I even love he brought up the 2 syringes. And it's like, will these help? And just Amy being like, what'd you say your papa did again? He was a janitor. And Jeopard's like, right. It's like, yeah, he was, but he ended up going on a single date with a scientist who's kind of a key figure in all of this. So that's why he has those. Because he had used them previously, like when he was trying to stop those last men who had wandered into the forest at the beginning of the series. So. And there is that real conversation, between Gus and Amy where Gus is like, I'm sorry, I wish I could do something to help you. But for her, it's like, yeah, like I'm human. Like this was always going to happen and it's just happening a lot sooner. But even Gus turns to Jeopard and it's like, does that mean? It's like, yeah, someday. But she's like, not today. But it's like, yeah, but he's strong, but stubborn, even more stubborn than I am. And Jeopard's like, I heard that. But yeah, they let Abbott know exactly where they were to draw him in, and they fell into the trap one by one. I mean, in some cases 2 by 2. Like ended up taking down his man systematically with all of their traps. So that was pretty dope. I do love the Home Alone-esque traps, but obviously some of those were like, you can tell the ones that were more set up by like, they all kind of work together, but you can tell the ones that were probably more Jeopard and Amy because those were the ones that were a little more brutal. Like one was the bear trap, and then the guy falls on like a wood spike and gets stabbed. You're like, yeah. Like one of them is just like dropping a whole bunch of rocks on a dude, which I mean that could still kill you by crushing you, give you a concussion and all that. Because some of those look like, hey, those guys are only knocked out, but some of those were straight up kills. Because even later on, Jeopard's like, oh yeah, that gun, it's empty because I used it to kill every single one of those people. I even wanted to save this last crossbow arrow for you, Abbott, but the problem is your one of your guys snuck up on me, so I had to save it for him. And it's like, right, we're both unarmed. And I do love when Jeopard goes toe to toe with Abbott. I'm about to say, like, yeah, it's a power, like, massive power difference, and Jeopard starts whooping that ass, and you're just like, yeah, but he's doing the thing he's doing. He's about to run his mouth, but I love Jeopard's like, I'm not going to let you do what you do. And he's like, what's that? Talk. Because that's your power. Like, you love to run your mouth and get inside of people's head. But he ends up revealing something to Jeopard in the end. He was like, the sad truth is, because I was thinking like, maybe that's not actually your fam. Like, how do you fully know? But it's like, no, that was his wife and son. And it's like, oh, your wife and son died waiting for you. It's like they were in your home, like while you were out working for me. They were because that is the thing, like strength, like any cult. It's like, right, hold this thing above your head, and it's like, yeah, it's waiting for you. Because he never probably thought to go back home. Like, why would he? He's like, they must be out there somewhere. But we don't know if that's true or not. We will never fully know, and that's the sad thing. Jeopard will never fully know whether that's the case or not. Once again, that could have also been a lie, because we don't know, like, just to keep Jeopard strung along, maybe that never was his wife and child, and maybe it was, and the Abbott's people had already killed her and the child, and so it's like, oh well, we kind of have no choice. Well, let's string him along. Oh well, he's not going to work with us anymore. Cut him loose and end up finally telling him the truth, but making it seem like, yeah, they died at home waiting for you, but maybe they did wait. I don't know, because I don't see, regardless of it all, I don't see Abbott and the Last Men letting Jeopard, his wife, because she's a traitor, because she ended up having a hybrid child and everything. Like, I don't know. There's just, and that's the thing, we will never know. Like I said, Jeopard will never know, and that's kind of like the tragedy of that situation, even more so. You also had the whole situation with Wendy and Becky. Obviously, everyone else has kind of already gone up to George and Beverly's place, but it's just Wendy and Becky, and Wendy jumps out at the last second to go back to check on her mom because it's like, right, she's already sick. I can't like let her like be alone in this situation. So I thought I was worried because I was like, oh man, it's going to turn into a hostage situation because Abbott's right hand person grabbed Wendy. I was like, oh boy, it's about to turn into one. But luckily, Becky got there in time and took her down. But during the struggle, she dropped something and she asked Wendy to pick it up and showed her. It's like, right, this is why I started the last arm to find my little sister. So, but I guess like Wendy just didn't have time to like, it's like, okay, you're my sister, but I also don't have time to process that. Mom's in trouble. I got to go find her. I got to help her. She's dealing with Abbott, who ended up taking down Jeopard because he knows Jeopard's weakness. I guess it's like, right, you get to know the people in the last men, amongst the last men, probably also knew Jeopard's history because he is a celebrity because he was a well-known football player. So he struck down his knee being like, oh yeah, how's that knee of yours? Ended up getting away. And it's this interesting inverse and direct parallel of Gus is being hidden away just like with his Pubba. And it's kind of the sad reality of knowing like, right, Amy's like, I'm already going to die. I'm already sick. Like what more could he do to me? So she's about to do her last stand, which is obviously the same thing that happened to Richard as well. So it's almost like history repeating itself in front of Gus where he's like, I can't do anything. And so Amy, sharpshooter, taking people out left and right, but then it comes down to Abbott, like the gun jammed, and so they go toe to toe. But obviously for Amy, it's like, okay, do whatever you want to because now I'm sick. And he's like, no, you're sick. And she ends up injecting him with both of them. It's like, yeah. But sadly, the cure that's made from Roy is there. Once again, it's not a perma cure. It was only going to be a temporary cure, but at least it would have bought Abbott more time. And the last thing we need is that SOB to have more time. Luckily, Gus grabbed it and ran. I think it meant a lot more to him in this situation, too, because he couldn't do anything for Richard. He couldn't do anything for his Pubba. He wanted to do something for Amy. He's like, I want to fight, and especially this guy who's coming after everyone because of me. So it kind of goes a little hardcore when he shoots Gus in the leg. You're like, Jesus. It's like, I mean, the guy just got no qualms with killing kids, especially hybrids. Luckily, Jeopard showed up in time, and he was about to shoot at Jeopard, but Gus was like, no, and he screams out. And I figured he'd have one moment this episode related to that, because we've seen that Gus, out of any hybrid, can really, like, commune and kind of connect with nature. It's come up, like I said, twice. There's the giant deer situation when he went up against the last man in episode 2. Then there's the tiger situation from, like, once again, the real tiger, that the Animal Army had, that whole situation, him calming it down. So we've seen those instances before, and he screams out no, and all those like buffalo or whatever that they had, or even bison, I can't tell the difference. It might have been bison that they had come across before, which I think is so ironic because they had just saw, like, him and Johnny had seen those earlier, and Abbott's perspective on it was, oh, they came about, they're still around because they stuck together, whereas Johnny's perspective was, well, there's not as many people hunting them down anymore. So I think it's an ironic statement now, considering, hey, you ended up turning on your brother, and now, well, Johnny turned on you, but yeah, you ended up shooting and killing him, and and it's like, oh, you didn't stick together, and now this herd that quote unquote stuck together tramples you. Felt very like Lion King-esque, but obviously it's like even more so when you actually think, because what is Lion King if not just like, I've never known this because I don't know enough Hamlet to like do direct parallels, but obviously it's like, yeah, that's what it is. It's just Hamlet, right? So but it's just, even more direct parallel because there's animals involved and stuff, but it's like, because I was about to say, like, well, there's no Scar involved in this, but it's like, no, Abbott's the Scar in this situation, so. But either way, he ends up getting trampled by all of those animals, but they end up avoiding Gus. Especially ironic, too, when he was like, oh, after this is all said and done, we'll give Johnny a proper burial. We're not animals. It's like, yeah, you're worse than animals. At least animals have their reasons for doing what they're doing. Let's not mince words. You're a monster. You're not an animal. You're a monster. So, and the fact is, he uses animals as such a degrading thing, but it's like, no, because animals are better than you because you were a monster. Once again, at least they do what they do because it's just the law of nature and stuff like that. It's just the circle of life. Continuing on the Lion King metaphor and stuff. But either way, they go all around Gus, and even Jeopard's like, wait, did you do that? And it's like, yeah, that was kind of like this beautiful moment even for Amy. It's just kind of representate, because it's very full circle for her too, because what did she see in, like, when she first came outside? A whole bunch of elephants running by. It's just like the beauty of nature itself. And now it's like, yeah, for nature kind of running wild to trample over this evil man who's trying to like stop things from progressing in the direction they are in. So it's all full reciprocal. It's all like coming, like, it's all serendipitous is the word I guess I'm looking for. And then there's Amy and Wendy's final moments together, where it's like, right, you look at those stars, look up at the sky. If you ever feel alone, that's where I'm going to be. So even when you feel alone, you never have to be alone. And that's also the difference for Wendy. He's like, she was saying, like, right, you're not alone anymore, because you've got your entire family. You know, you got your family, you got Jeopardy, you got Guts, you got Becky. Like, you're not alone anymore, because that's when how she found Amy was alone. I mean, how Amy found Wendy. And obviously, one last middle finger from, the last of his strength and his hate. Your boy Abbott had to like shoot Gus, and it's like, yeah, we can see like, it did wound him pretty deeply, because you see the blood. And interestingly enough, like, because it's from the animals, like once again the bisons or the buffalo, whatever they are, their hooves are there, and the blood coming from Gus fills in one of the hooves underneath him, so it's very symbolic in some regards, especially because they're like, what is he? He's a deer kid, and deers have hooves as well, so I don't know. But while he was out of it, obviously Amy died, and obviously Jeopard's there, and so is Becky and all of the kids. And Jeopard being the one giving the eulogy about how obviously Jeopard like thought like everyone lost in this world. He lost, like, he's like, we would have all been better off if we had stayed in our home, you know? We wouldn't have lost maybe the loves we lost, the people we lost. There wouldn't have been so much death and destruction, and just, there wouldn't have been as much loss. And even in his case, it's like, maybe if I had just stayed home, if I hadn't gone, like if I had just waited, maybe I would have been reunited with my family. But at the end of the day, we've all lost something along this way. And he's like, but you, Amy, he's like, I thought everyone was in that boat, but you weren't, Amy. You found so much, you know, after the Great Crumble, and it, like, you aren't going. Amy Eden lives on in each and every one of their kids. I see that your spirit lives on in them, you know, and, you know, saying goodbye to a new friend, you know. And I thought that was kind of like heartbreaking and beautiful. And we see that while Gus is laying down recovering, Jeopard listens to the tape, because it's like, all right, got to do, like, I've got to hear this for myself. And so Becky and Wendy are looking through one of Gus's books, and then they look through it, and we see like Alaska, and like, it's like, wait, why did Pubba have this? So I guess maybe he ended up having some of the, some of like that box that contained like the virus and stuff like that. I guess it also contained some of the research. So maybe on some level, Richard knew, at least maybe has some idea where Birdie might have been, but knowing at least, I mean, he's not the scientist, so who knows like how much he's like, hey, these are papers, I'll make books out of them for Gus, because he probably felt like, well, I'm cutting us off from the rest of the world, so it doesn't really matter. But it is, you know, it specifically tells them the facility that she's at in Alaska, so. But Gus has a dream that points him towards his mom, and she's cold and she's in danger and asking for help. So now he's even more certain about going, and he's not going alone. Jeopard's like, yeah, I'm not leaving your side. I'm with you all the way, Sweet Tooth. It's not going to be easy, but I mean, who knows what the road has ahead of us. Becky and Wendy are going to, because Becky's not going anywhere without Wendy. And I think for Wendy, it's like, this is important. So this is where I want to be. That her siblings are going to stay with, I almost kind of want it all in to go, but I'm also like, yeah, that probably would be, not probably, definitely would be too much. So they're going to stay with Beverly and George until they get back. So setting off on another adventure. And I love the beautiful ending of like, yeah, but the difference is Gus kind of started this adventure alone. He kind of wanted to venture out on his own. I mean, granted, he was there with Big Man, but it's like, nah, I've got my family by my side. You know, the family he found post all of this, post losing his pub and everything. And it's like, yeah, I got to go help mom. She's out there. She needs my help. And especially because Jeopard's like, yeah, she's trying to save the world. I believe your mom is trying to fix things. And maybe we can help her fix things too, especially considering Gus is a missing piece of this puzzle. And once again, we still don't know who or what is up there with her. Like, obviously, we haven't cut back to present day Birdie since episode 1, like when she was looking at the map of stuff. Like, that's the last time we saw it. Once again, she's been at this for like 10 years. So, and obviously we got a little bit with Ronnie this episode, with her just kind of like on her own journeying out. Once again, she's got a ticking clock, but very much like a parallel of Amy, just gonna live my life, you know. And so we also catch up with Audie, who shows up there at the end, and it's that conversation of being the only person who knows how special Gus is. It's this situation of, you know, both of them are going to change the world forever. So I don't know which route they're going to take Audie going forward. Like, he was very in his mad scientist bag this season. He was just so consumed by it. But maybe now that Ronnie's gone, I mean, maybe that chips away some of his humanity. Like, maybe he leans into the mad. I don't know, like, because I was worried, like, I figured he'd probably, like, descent into madness, which he kind of did. And like I said, mad scientist vibes. I don't know if he's going to go that hard next season or not, but maybe him and Birdie together could potentially find the cure. So all these stories kind of drawn together. So he's going to Alaska to follow them there. I'm so curious what they did with the Roy. I'm sure they probably left that with Amy so that, like, Roy, some part of Roy could be buried with her, I'm sure. Because I believe they did return that to, like, I think, because Gus had got that after, like, Abbott had died. Well, when they thought he got trampled and was completely dead. So, but with this, all of the last men are gone. I am curious. I mean, I guess maybe Jordan took Becky's advice and just went back to look after his family, because it's like, right, you don't need them to, but it's also like, right, the animal army is completely gone. So in some ways, maybe you got your revenge even though you didn't get it, because even Tiger's dead, Becky's still alive. I don't know if I mean, considering you're going to Alaska, I doubt their paths are going to cross, but maybe on their way to find the Air Lords to take them, because they're the only people you know for sure have the planes. But it's like, I mean, once again, they could also take a boat too, so we'll see how that. But once again, we learned last episode that Dolly's the one that took her, so it'd be very poetic for them to kind of, once again, the small world that it is, these connections. I wonder, does Rufus still have that tank? It's going to be. That's why I feel like you have to circle back to the Air Lords in some shape or form. I mean, because they probably will go back and snatch up everything that's left of the last men, because is someone else going to step in to fill that vacuum? It's like, well, yeah, because there was someone else that I completely forgot about, and that was Shang. I was like, oh, right. And it's like, oh, maybe he never had a cure or whatever, but then she also has some of the recordings from Audie. There's at least one that they're going to try and transcribe. So they already know Gus is special, but now you take all of Audie's research and them trying to probably pick up where they left off. So they're probably going to be even more adamant about going after Gus. They knew he was special, but even more so now, it's like, oh, because it's like, right, the key to the cure is hybrids, but he's very special. He's very key to all of this. So that's probably going to be in Audie's research. So I was like, oh, with one bad guy following, we got introduced to another baddie. And once again, she already kind of wiped out the other lords. So she's the one kind of running things. I guess the whole Evergreen thing is kind of up in smokes now. I mean, granted, she does have the resources and stuff like that, but she doesn't have the management and whatever plans Abbott was going to do, because once again, him and his people are wiped out. So, but we see she feeding something at the end. I'm curious, are those going to be hybrids that she's feeding? Like, very like, if you ever see iZombie, when zombies don't get any food for a while, they completely lose their humanity. Like, any form of humanity they had gets completely wiped out, and they just become feral. And I'm wondering if maybe that's what happened there. Like maybe those are just some wild animals that she made feral, or maybe they're hybrids that she made feral. Because they set Zhang up to be, yes, Abbott's ruthless, but she's even more ruthless. Like it's like, yo, you thought he was bad, Zhang's worse. It definitely feels like they're setting that up. But we'll ultimately have to wait to see what the next season has in store for us. The show was renewed for a third season, but a third and final season, which is going to be interesting because this is something I didn't initially know. I only knew this because I was looking up. Obviously, I stumbled across some stuff because when I was doing stuff for my nerd mode, I didn't realize. I thought like it was all one series, but Sweet Tooth stopped for a bit. It came to an end, and then sometime later they did a sequel series that is also finished too, because I think it ended like in 2021. But there's a sequel series called Sweet Tooth: The Return. So that's why I'm curious about this final season. Is this because I don't know where how much of the story's been adapted from the original run and how much is like. So what I'm wondering is, like, for example, what if these first two seasons are pulled from the original run and that the third and final season is pulled from The Return? Probably not. Maybe all three seasons are taken directly from the original Sweet Tooth run, and then like there's the sequel series that maybe won't get adapted, or maybe they'll pull elements from. I don't fully know how that would break down. I'll have to look into it a little bit more after the fact to kind of compare and contrast the show to the comic book. I know tonally and stuff like that is different, but like story beat wise, I'm curious like how similar they are. So that's going to be interesting to see, but it's like, it's kind of wild to think that this could end next, but I'm also like, it feels like it could be a good place to wrap up, especially because like where this all started is where this is going to end in Alaska. So it feels very befitting. I am curious, like if they, like I said, if they do pull some stuff from The Return, like I won't spoil it, but I know like the cover to the final comic run, the final comic is supposed to be like a parallel reflective of the cover of the first comic of the series. So I don't want to spoil what that is exactly, but I mean, you can look it up yourself if you're curious. But I know that's the only thing I know about The Return is just that, just like, oh, it's supposed to be mirrored images of each other to some extent. So like I said, that's why I'm curious, like, will they pull from that at all? I'm really curious to see what this third and final season looks like. Once again, we are in the middle of a writer's strike, so I have no idea what that means for the show. It's definitely going to end up being probably heavily pushed back. I hope that doesn't affect how many episodes it's going to be, because final season stuff has been starting to get cut even on Netflix. I heard with like the Umbrella Academy only being 6 episodes, I think I heard. We'll see if that ends up being true or not. So I was reading something that made it seem like they are going to go with the 8 episodes as well, but I don't know if that was just like something about, that might have been about season 2, but I'd hope that maybe, I don't know, maybe season 3 is like a little bit longer, or maybe it is just kind of like the same 8 episodes, but I'm very curious to see whenever we are ultimately able to get it. I'm curious to see how the story of Sweet Tooth comes to an end. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.